Welcome to the inaugural episode of a new sports podcast, Hip and the Lip. I am Hip, joined by my co-host, The Lip.
Hello.
Thanks for that very warm welcome, Lip, as we embark upon this journey to talk about sports. Hip and The Lip, we are a couple of guys from the same town on Long Island. Grew up as New York sports fanatics. Now we're dudes with day jobs that don't have to do with sports, and so instead of just continuing the conversations that we have about sports, we said, let's make it a podcast. So here we are, and at its core, we want to focus on the New York Islanders. So there's many reasons for this. The New York Islanders just moved to the Barclays Center. It's their first season there. They are a team that has just been trying to break through for so many years, and they quite haven't gotten there yet. And so, fortunately for all of us, The Lip is the most diehard Islander fan that you could find. I'm sure there's many at his level, so no offense. But you could put him up against anyone else with Islanders history trivia, and he will be competitive. And so he has gone through the ups and downs, mostly downs, as we all know. And so this is a team with a growing but still small fan base, and I think it'd be a lot of fun for a team that's still kind of like they're here in New York and they're at Barclays, but they're not getting that kind of attention. And so that's what makes it still hip, right? So let's get right to it. We just watched the Islanders play the Washington Capitals, and so I think for those of us who watched some of the playoffs last year may find this clip familiar.
That one grabbed and pitched aside by Holton. Carlson off Ward, kept alive. Letty a shot. Oh, directed on goal.
Score! Tavares! Score! So you may not even know who Tavares is, but if you're watching that game, that was pretty cool. And so the Islanders just played this same very team, and the game ended less than an hour ago, and we're so energetic. So that means they must have won the game, right?
Oh, yes, obviously, and that is absolutely the source of our energy this evening. It cannot be anything else other than the Islanders' absolutely brilliant, wonderful, fantastic performance against the Washington Capitals this evening. And, I just want to say, and I have been an Islander fan for many, many years, a diehard Islander fan. For those who also are diehard fans, memories of the Nassau Coliseum, going there when I was younger, going there in the early 90s. It was quite an experience, particularly in the early 90s. And then for many, many years, the team had been absolutely dreadful for a variety of reasons, which we won't have to go absolutely dreadful, which we won't have to get into right now. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But for right now, I just want to give a little bit of background for myself as a diehard fan who was absolutely devastated when they lost to the Capitals last year.
Do you need a tissue or two? I mean, come on.
They're just out of reach. They're actually right over there. And if I can only slide my chair over, because I may start to tear up thinking about Game 7 last year. And tonight's game against the Capitals was the first one since Game 7 last year. However, there was only one player for the team that showed up in that game, and that was the goalie, Yaroslav Halak, which ironically was one of the big reasons why they lost this evening. But that was a very painful series to watch, and to come to terms with that was the very last time we would ever see the team in the Nassau Coliseum, which was very, very sad for any diehard Islander fan that got to enjoy and experience a game there. And now we, of course, have to embrace the fact that they're not there anymore, that they're now in Brooklyn. But that is something that we all are just getting used to. But this was the first game tonight since Game 7 of last year. And I got to say, I was absolutely astounded at the complete lack of intensity. And I cannot emphasize that phrase enough. Lack of intensity that this team showed in the early going. Now, they actually had a little tagline in the intro. They showed highlights from last year. They showed, clips from games, and they concluded it with the word redemption, which was the tagline for this evening. Like, if they beat them 9-0, they redeemed themselves for that dreadful showing in Game 7 last year, and for the painful loss in the series, which of course was not going to be the case. But the way they came out tonight, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, they just looked flat. They looked disinterested. Washington pushed. They didn't push back. And it was like that all game. It set the tone all game for the way that they played in the early going.
Well, let's give a little more context here. The Washington Capitals, they have the most points in the NHL, correct?
Correct. They're right up there. Yes.
And they have probably one of the best goalies. They have one of the best offensive player, if not the best. He's right up there. I mean, how do you compare the Capitals team and the Islanders teams from that series last year to the teams now? I mean, are they very different? Are they fairly similar? Putting tonight, you can't put a judge too much in one game, but you compare it from them to now. Do you see major differences?
Yeah, the Capitals are definitely better than they were last year. They've made a few additions to their team that they made in the offseason. Their goalie is playing out of his mind. He is right now the front runner for the Vezina Trophy, which is the award that goes to the best goalie in the NHL. Right now, he's the front runner. He has been playing absolutely superb hockey the whole year, but the team in front of him is very, very good. And Alex Ovechkin, even if you happen to have heard of the NHL, you know who Alex Ovechkin is, one of the great goal scorers in the game. They have a lot of other very good complementary players. They have a solid defensive core, which they were missing a few of their defensemen today, but they are absolutely without question.
So are the Islanders. They're missing one of the Islanders, missing their core defenseman player, I think, which is worth mentioning.
And that is absolutely true, as Johnny Boychuk will be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. It was announced earlier this week that he has an upper body injury. And, of course, I got to put that in quotations because it'll never be revealed what the injury is, although anybody that saw the play in which he got injured knows that he hurt his shoulder because he went 35 miles an hour into the boards and hit his shoulder. So I think it's safe to say that he injured his shoulder on the play. So, but he will be out for the next.
Don't make sure you don't injure your neck. Just trying to explain that to us, okay?
I'm trying to brace myself, the same as he did.
So with these descriptions of NHL injuries, what's the deal? The teams don't have to be more specific. Like, what's the reasoning behind that? You pay attention to any other sport. Aren't they more specific than that? I've never heard this upper body, lower body. What's going on?
Yeah, so the idea is that they're trying to protect that the NHL allows the NHL teams to reveal as little about the injuries as possible, meaning that they can classify the injury as either it was the upper part of the body, above whatever part of the body you want to give your line of demarcation to.
Well, where's their line? Is it the groin line? Well, I mean, there's got to be a line. How do you think Gary Bettman describes the line to the teams? It's got to be a line somewhere.
I would hope that somebody asked that question and said, "Excuse me, Gary, but now when we classify an upper body and lower body injury, let's say that the injury is around the groin area. Now, do we classify it as both upper and lower? Do we give that the lower, since people usually equate that particular region of the male body as the lower? But I would have loved to see him answer that question. Unfortunately,
belly button would still be upper. I'm trying to think of an injury that you could get that's like right in that awkward spot where it's right in the middle, and you have to go to the NHL for guidance on how to decide whether to say it's upper or lower body. What's like if you get it like between your belly button and upper groin, like if you just get if you just get a really bad bruise or something. Anyway, it's a fun thought.
It is a fun thought. I would love to see him score him to answer that question, since he's so good at dealing with the tough questions, as is the NHL commissioner. But
Johnny Boychuk, we've talked about how long he's out.
Yes.
We've talked about the injury, but we haven't talked about what it means for the Islanders, why it's significant that he's out.
Well, it's significant because he's one of their best defensemen. He plays some of the most minutes on the team. Most of the top NHL defensemen are going to play upwards of 22, 23 minutes a game, at least in the regular season, which is exactly what he does. He plays in all situations. He plays.
Hold on, pause. I think we have to verify 22 to 23 minutes. I don't think that's specific enough of an average for you to provide how many minutes the top defenseman play. Maybe
well,
we'll
I tell
say
you what.
All right. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. We'll check after the show and call you out for just being, you're being so conservative with that range. It's so wide. I mean, come on.
Well, I tell you what, for the next podcast, I will look into that. I will research the top defenseman in the NHL and see on average how many minutes in the game they play.
I think we appreciate your promise to do so, but don't actually, because if you start telling us, then we'll get bored in about 5 seconds. So
you're probably right.
So we'll leave it at that. So okay.
Good thread. Moving on. Next.
Next, he plays a lot of minutes. Yes.
He does. Yes.
And so what?
And he plays in all situations. He plays on the penalty kill. He plays on the power play. He has a right-handed shot, which is very valuable. He has a very hard, heavy shot. So when he plays on the power play, he's able usually to get his shot on net, which is very key for a team on the power play. He is a physical defenseman. He plays it. Usually is matched up against the other team's best players. So he is a key loss for the Islanders. He is a significant loss. You cannot, understate his significance to the team and the significance of the injury and his now being out of the lineup for an extended period of time, which they're going to have to weather this, storm that's going to be coming without him in the lineup. So let's see if they can handle it.
So they gave a call out. I saw on the broadcast tonight. They made a mention of the rookie defenseman Adam. What's his last name?
Pelech. Yeah,
so he apparently he made a nice play on a block of a shot. I don't know if you saw that. That was the only thing. But they mentioned his name. So is he a candidate to pick up a lot of the slack here?
Well, he's going to have to because and most Islander fans, of course, are hoping, and he's played well so far. He had a few shaky moments tonight, but he's played for the most part. He's played well so far, and Islander fans are hoping that he is going to stay in the lineup because if we have to see Brian Straight, who wears number 37, who was on the last year, I believe, of a 3-year deal, an ill-conceived 3-year deal that he signed a couple of years ago.
How many million?
That I can't answer. That I'm not sure. Maybe about $1 million a year. I don't know, something like that. Around there, or just around like the league average, or maybe just below. But he is awful. He is regarded, at least amongst Islander fans, as one of the worst defensemen in the league, and one of the worst defensemen the team has ever had. He is awful, and but for some reason, the coaching staff has this absurd infatuation with him.
So is your body like convulsing when he comes onto the ice every time you see his number?
You cringe every time he jumps on. And you just go, "Oh God, please just don't do something stupid. Just keep the puck away from him. Just don't." Because the puck's going to find him, and when that puck is on his stick, it's like a hand grenade because you know that it's going to blow up, and something bad is going to happen. But Pelech right now is taking his spot in the lineup, and
when a woman puts her hand on you, you're kind of like a hand grenade. You just kind of like explode right away.
It is a similar type explosion.
So another player that was out, who had similar explosion, right? Who is out and has returned is the goalie. He missed a handful of games there, and so you mentioned him at the beginning about how he didn't look very good. So tell us more about that.
Well, he's been out for a few games. Of course, God only knows what kind of injury, since it was only classified as an upper body injury. There was debate as to whether or not he should have started tonight. Maybe they should have let Grice start tonight because it was a game against the Capital, a key game against a divisional opponent. It was going to be an emotional environment at the Barclays Center tonight. At least that was the anticipation going in, and they decided to start Halak.
That emotion in the crowd probably lasted about 5 minutes. if that much going into the game, it died down pretty quickly.
Correct, give or take. Yeah, it died down very quickly, considering that they had absolutely nothing to be excited about, and they saw their team demonstrating very little emotion and passion on the ice. But yes, so the goalie tonight, Mr. Halak, did not play well. The first 2 goals of the game were terrible goals. You can even make the argument that the third goal is that he should have had 2, but the first 2 goals were bad goals. I know the second goal was scored.
Yeah, goal 1 was kind of like he was on along the side of the net, and there was a little hole that the puck found through.
So the first goal.
Yeah. How would Howie Rose describe these goals?
Well,
hi,
but
hi, I'm back in the broadcasts. We heard it firsthand how he described them, but your impression of Howie Rose would be more entertaining.
I'm not the greatest at giving an impression of Howie. I can do the "Hi, I'm Howie Rose," but Howie, and just like anybody else that saw it, would have described it simply as Halak was too deep in his net. There was a little crevice in between his pad and the post, and
can't leave those crevices.
He cannot leave the crevices, and the puck just kind of squirted its way through. Palek lost his man behind the net. He was able to get his stick in the shooting lane, but it was a minor deflection. It was still a shot that he should have stopped. If he was in position, it's an easy save, and there's no goal there. It was a soft goal, a bad goal, and one that definitely got them down early, deflated the team early, and they definitely did not recover, at least for the remainder of that first period, as Washington will go on to score another goal in that first period. Which the greatest goal scorer, arguably the greatest goal scorer in the league, got a shot past Halak on an odd man rush. It was a 3-on-2. Another shaky play for Pelech, who was trying to recover after turning the puck over in the offensive zone. 3-on-2 come the Caps, led by Ovechkin. Ovechkin gets in the shooting lane, has a very, very good angle to put it on goal. It squirts through Halak, 2-0, and right there you just knew that things were not going to go well for the Islanders this evening.
And it ended up 4-1 loss, the final goal being an open netter. You just never felt like there was that moment late in the second period where the Islanders had a power play. They were down 2-1. They had some good looks at the net, and they just couldn't capitalize. That was the turning point. And then the Capitals scored towards the end of the second period, made it 3-1 right after an Islander power play ended, if I'm not mistaken, and that kind of was the ultimate deflation.
Yeah, and I think that was definitely the final nail in the coffin. As Marek the power play, they had a couple of really good chances. Halak made a couple of great saves. Zidlicki made just a terrible play behind the net, which led to the third goal. It was a lazy, just bad play by Zidlicki, who has had a terrible year. I wish they would get Zidlicki out of there too. I'd love to see them bring up another one of their defensive prospects in the minors right now, particularly Brian Pulak. We don't have to get into that just yet, but Zidlicki made a terrible play behind the net. Just a lazy play. Nicholas Backstrom, one of the great playmaking centers in the game, easily takes the puck off his stick, finds a teammate cutting down from the blue line there, laid it on his stick, past Halak, and that was all she wrote as the Islanders go down 4-1, and just a disappointing performance from the Islanders this evening.
So if you were not a Washington Capitals fan, because if you were, you would have had a blast at the Barclays Center. But if you were not, you would have been having a much more enjoyable time, and still would be right this second as we're talking time at Madison Square Garden, because a certain artist is currently performing there as we speak. I'm going to take the lip to pick up on who this is.
Do-do-do. Yes, that is correct. William is performing at Juvenile, but then if you're so smart, tell me why you're still so afraid.
All right. If that we could just take that snippet and throw it to the American Idol judges and see how they react. I think they would send you to Hollywood immediately. If you weren't American Idol, the last season debuted last night, a 2-hour episode to kick things off, and they kind of like they bring in like the people that get accepted right away to kind of build up your excitement for the season, and then later on they kind of reject a few people and you feel sad, but you kind of understand, and they make you they kind of justify it, and they end up on a note of like just finding this this beautiful girl who has a next Jimmy Kimmel. He goes on to recap all the season winners, and after like seasons 2 and 3, you don't even recognize any of the people who won the show. So that's the two sides of it. There's your American Idol catch up, and if you've missed all the prior 14 whatever seasons, you just got it summarized in 30
yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I know we're going to move on, but is Simon still on? Simon's still there, right? I mean, he's a fixture on the show, right? Oh wait, no, he's been gone for like 8 years now. Right? I don't even know.
Simon's been gone for a while.
Yeah, I think that's when the show. I think that's when the show started going downhill.
So we're not just look. Just to be clear, we don't want to just talk about the Islanders. We're New York sports fans. We're fans of sports. You and I are in the same fantasy football league for 7 years running now. We're on top.
5 championships combined.
A lot of championships combined. So there'll be fantasy sports advice in the future. Saw a headline yesterday. Most people have probably heard by now. Mike Piazza will be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, 4th time on the ballot. He and Ken Griffey Jr. Now, I'm a Mets fan. Happy that he decided to go into the Hall as a Mets fan. I think that was expected. But
well, I'm sorry, just to interrupt, but you are a lifelong Mets fan, correct?
Of course. Lifelong. So it's like the physical specimens of these players. Yeah.
So now that was Piazza pre-steroids, right? That was before he started doing steroids, because that box would not nearly be big enough to contain the steroid Piazza. The later years.
On the video feed, I'm showing a starting lineup 1999 figurine of Mike Piazza in a catching pose. Clearly, the highest trait that he brought as a baseball player. His ability. Everyone talks about that before anything else. But to me, look, we wanted him to get voted in the first ballot, and what I just don't understand is so it's a 75% threshold you have to get selected by the writers to get in, right?
Yep.
I think I read his percentage was 83. I don't know what it was last time, but what happened between last year and this year? What did Mike Piazza do that caused him suddenly to get this jump in percentage of votes, and now he's in the Hall of Fame? That part I don't understand.
I don't either. It's a great question, and considering that, and we all know the reason why he wasn't voted in the first couple of years of eligibility is because there has been, rumors and speculation and innuendo that he had done performance-enhancing drugs or steroids. And as we know, the baseball writers have not been allowing anybody that's even been like marginally or loosely connected with steroids into the Hall of Fame. Guys that have been, that have failed drug tests and have not gotten in, and other guys that there's just been rumors and speculation about have not gotten in either. We can say the names: McGuire, Sosa, Bonds, Clemens, all-time great players that have not gotten into the Hall of Fame simply because of steroids. So Mike Piazza, who was, I think, to most people, an obvious first ballot Hall of Famer, arguably, the greatest hitting catcher of all time. Now, I think one year he did throw out more than 10% of the base runners that tried to steal bases on him. But but one of the great hitting catchers of all time. Absolutely was a first ballot Hall of Famer for anybody that was able to watch him play every day. And the fact that it took him multiple years to get in, and again, we know the reasons why, and now all of a sudden he's let in, and you say, well, how come now? How come you didn't want to let him in the last couple of years because of steroids, and now, well, we changed our minds. We don't think he did steroids now, so we're going to let him in. It doesn't make sense to me either.
Is there any player you can think of who has gotten into the Hall of Fame who had this cloud of steroids over them before Piazza, wasn't voted in the first few ballots, and now suddenly is in? Is this unprecedented?
This is absolutely unprecedented. I don't think there's anybody. I can't think of anybody else that has gotten in which that cloud of steroids was hovering over them at the time of their eligibility. All the the other big names that we know about, again, the Bonds, the McGuires, the Sosas, the Clemens, all those guys have not gotten in.
Palmeiro.
And Palmeiro. I mean, there are so many guys that were obvious.
Sosa. Yeah.
Yep, all those guys that were obvious Hall of Famers.
Mike Piazza's the first guy with this suspicion. And is it something like marginal suspicion? So like he had, and some of the claims for this guy, it's like he had back acne and and had a temper. And so is it because like he wasn't linked in a report or something, like they were able to get over it after 4 years? It just seems so illogical and stupid, and maybe that's all this is. Maybe it's as simple as that.
It may be, and yes, it seems like it is just completely arbitrary and capricious, and it really just doesn't make sense. And I've seen a few articles written over the last day or so. Does this now open the door for other guys that have been suspected of doing steroids? Maybe not necessarily have has been proven that they have done because they failed a drug test. But, does this open a door for those guys now? And, I don't know. I mean, Bonds never failed a drug test, as far as I know. I don't, he was outed by the feds when, they were investigating him, the whole Balco scandal. But, he never failed a drug test. An obvious first ballot, should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer based on the numbers. So, do those guys eventually get let in? What's going to happen going forward? That's the great question. And what does baseball do about this? And I'll just say, I'll take a point that I listened to Mr. Mike Francesa today make this point, and I do think it was a valid point.
I don't know. I'm not too familiar with him. Can you give me an idea of like what he sounds like?
So it sounded like this. Piazza gets in. We all know the reasons why he didn't get in initially, because of the steroids. So congratulations to Mike. We'll have him on the show tomorrow, and I will pleasure him when he comes on as a guest on my show. But he did make.
I will pleasure him.
And I'm sure that Mr. Piazza enjoyed it very much. But he did make an interesting point today that baseball, values their history so much. And, in however many years when people are going to the Hall of Fame and if these guys are never voted in, all of a sudden you'll have this big gaping hole for this time period. And you'll say, well, where are all the great Hall of Fame players from this era? How come they're not here? And baseball is going to have to try and find some way to reconcile that. And I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, turning to the positives here, Ken Griffey Jr. Set a record. I read he had like the highest percentage of yes votes, which kind of struck me also on the flip side. Not unanimous. There were no player has ever been unanimously voted into the Hall of Fame. Just period.
Nope, never. And I think they all get together, before the vote, and they say, all right, so who are the 2, 3, 4 people that are going to vote no for this obvious Hall of Famer, which Ken Griffey Jr. was an obvious Hall of Famer, an obvious first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the most dominant players of the 90s, arguably the best player of that decade. And but still 3 ballots said no. It doesn't matter. No, he got in. He got a very high percentage, 99.3, whatever it was. And but you wonder though if they all get together in a room and say, all right, you and you and you're all going to vote no for him, and make sure that we don't give him 100%.
Yes.
maybe they just pick names out of a hat. All right, okay, Joe, Steve.
I think. Let's just you take Griffey, I'll take Bonds. Oh, wait, all right.
All right, we can all agree. All right, moving on. Next item on the agenda.
What a process. Yeah, I think it's a good time to say next. Let's talk about some NFL. We got playoff games coming up this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And so I pulled up the games just to look at who's going. And the first thing that jumped out at me, none of the teams who are home are favored to win. They're all the home teams are underdogs. I wonder if that's ever happened in the first round of an NFL playoff. All 4 home teams are underdogs.
Yeah, actually, so I know that the Redskins were initially favored over the Packers. Has that betting line moved? So now they are.
Today, I checked today. Yeah. So maybe it's not it's not as strong of a point, maybe, but yeah, I mean today it was +1 Washington. I don't know what happened, but I guess the money moved in Vegas a certain way, and they had to adjust the line. But it's some interesting matchups. So Kansas City, Houston. Kansas City hasn't won a playoff game in 22 years. 22 years. And
wow.
here we are, fans of New York. Tom Coughlin has won, won 2 Super Bowls in how many years? 4 years? No, it wasn't 4. How many years between the two?
Well, it was in the
07.
2007 and 2011 seasons.
So he won 2 Super Bowls in 4 years, and now 4 years later, he's gone. Just a different market. We all know, it's what did you do for me? What are you doing for me now? Not what you do for me yesterday. It's a different mentality, and perhaps Coughlin would have gotten let go even sooner if he didn't have those 2 Super Bowls. So you can, because they started 0-6, I think 2 years later, right? So and he lasted to this point. But anyway, neither of these teams, I guess, excite you as teams to watch. Kansas City is a pretty disciplined team. They don't have any explosive playmakers, really. I mean, they run the ball a lot, and they don't turn it over, and their defense has been pretty solid. And Houston is even less exciting, except for J.J. Watt. I mean, Houston has used 4 starting quarterbacks this year, and they won the division. So I'm not going out of my way to watch that one personally. I don't have anything to add to that game, but it's kind of mad to me. Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. Cincinnati, we said Kansas City hasn't won a playoff game in 22 years. Well, Cincinnati's even worse, 25 years. Cincinnati has not won.
Was Norman Julius Esiason the quarterback the last time that the Cincinnati Bengals won a playoff game?
You go back 25 years, that's like 91. So maybe. Was he the quarterback then? I don't know. He may have been.
I think so. And then he came to the Jets, I believe, the following year, if I'm not mistaken. So I believe that he was the quarterback the last time that the Bengals won a playoff game. And that's amazing. Wow, 25 years.
Norman Julius, better known as Boomer. Eric just likes to use the technically correct names to sound smart.
I don't think I'm giving off that impression to any of our viewers thus far.
So good. So let's keep it that way. Cincinnati, using, again, they're the home team. They're the underdog. They're using a rookie backup quarterback because Andy Dalton's injured. They have some playmakers, but it's a rookie quarterback, and Pittsburgh is always a threat to put up a ton of points. So I could see why Pittsburgh is favored here. Seattle and Minnesota. Seattle's maybe getting Marshawn Lynch back. Minnesota has Teddy Bridgewater. His top receivers are Stephon Diggs and Mike Wallace. I know there might be a listener out there who owns Stephon Diggs on his fantasy football team. It's a dig on Diggs. Diggs. Well, look, the point is, you have Adrian Peterson. Teddy Bridgewater's been so inconsistent. I don't know how you can really expect that team to make a deep run. And Seattle's gone to the NFC Championship game 2 consecutive years. They're a team firing. They got off to a bad start this year, but they were in Super Bowl last year, obviously. And interestingly, Minnesota won the division that last game in Week 17 against Green Bay, and I think Green Bay would have won the division had they beaten Minnesota. And
that game was for the division, yep.
Right, and so who would Green Bay? Green Bay's at Washington. So if Green Bay won, would Green Bay be playing Seattle and Minnesota at Washington? It makes you wonder. I don't know how it would have shook out, but it's a tough draw for Minnesota. Seattle coming into their building by winning.
Seattle. And Seattle annihilated Minnesota. It was only a month ago that they went into Minnesota and absolutely demolished them. And I'll be honest, I didn't think that Seattle was going to recover. They just looked like they were very disjointed. They just didn't look. They just seemed like they were, that there was a lot of inner turmoil within that locker room. Obviously, with the holdout.
Beginning of the year. And you know what? Russell Wilson has been playing great. Second half of the year, great season. Doug Baldwin, Doug Baldwin has come. He was kind of an above average, steady, reliable receiver. Suddenly explodes. A top top receiver in the NFL the last like 6 weeks.
Well, if you picked him up on your fantasy team and you were, had a chance to make the playoffs, I'm sure you had probably a very good run there, considering how
You'd have a drawer. You'd have a drawer full of sticky tissues. I suppose. That
Well,
sounds like something you may have experienced this season.
Yes, well, I will not open that drawer over there, but luckily the camera's not pointed at that drawer. But unfortunately for me, the rest of my crappy team was not able to allow me to advance very far in the fantasy football playoffs in our league this year, despite me having both Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin, who both exploded at the end of the season, along with Russell Wilson, who started playing a different type of brand of football. I mean, Russell Wilson just thought that he could, let a play just completely break down, get out of the pocket, start running around, and just make plays that way. And he was learning, learning that teams are going to adjust to him, and other defenses were, figuring out his game and how to, defend him. And he said, okay, I have to adjust my game. He started staying in the pocket, and now that offense is completely taken off. They even without Jimmy Graham, who got injured about a month ago. And right now, I mean, if you asked me which team I would say is the favorite to get back to the Super Bowl, I would say Seattle, despite Arizona and despite Carolina, them having great seasons. I would say Seattle, because they're battle-tested, because they're experienced, because they peaked at the right time. I would say that they're my odds-on favorite.
And you said Russell Wilson changed his game. He certainly did on the field. Off the field, he did by becoming celibate. And I wonder if that, all that talk and Aaron Rodgers going the other way, Aaron Rodgers and his offense really struggling. It's like a different player on the field some of the time when you're watching. This year, it just was not the same Green Bay team that you're used to seeing with Aaron Rodgers. And perhaps it's Jordy Nelson not being there. But you would think that just losing him, Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback that he is, can still find ways to win games. And okay, fine, they did. They're in the playoffs, and you never felt confident watching them as an offense this year. But heck, they're here and they're playing at Washington against the quarterback who's had an unbelievable season, really. Kind of out of nowhere, Kirk Cousins. I mean, the Michigan State guy who is backing up Robert Griffin III, right? And now having a full season. I mean, he's just been unbelievable.
Nobody could have saw this coming. I mean, I guess only I had the foresight to get Kirk Cousins in our league for $2 or whatever I spent
and
for
then
him,
you traded him.
and then trade him for Amari Cooper, and I thought I had a steal.
Everybody thought it was a trade that should be vetoed because you were getting the better end. And meanwhile, Kirk Cousins went on to have one of the better, top 5, maybe statistical seasons of any quarterback in the league this year.
They had I think he had almost 30 touchdowns, only maybe 10 or 11 whatever it was interceptions, threw for over 4,000 yards. I mean, led the team to a division title. I granted a terrible division with some worse teams.
Terrible,
but he had.
Quarterback, the other quarterbacks in the division. I mean, Sam Bradford and Eli Manning. I mean, Dallas obviously was missing Romo most of the year, but still rose to the top, won the games they needed to, and now they're home and have a legitimate shot against Green Bay. I mean, I think that they just stick to their game. They can easily move on.
No question. They are a great home team. They were great at home all year. That's where Cousins played his best football, and I absolutely give them a more than a puncher's chance of beating Green Bay on what do they play?
Where do you get this puncher's chance?
I said more than a puncher's chance. More than a just a puncher's chance.
Puncher's chance. All right.
I'll look up what that means later.
Okay, thanks. Because everyone else is right now. So all right. So before we close here, let's just talk about the Islanders' upcoming schedule. Now, they beat Dallas on Sunday, and then they lost tonight. They're at Philly on Saturday, then versus the Blue Jackets on Tuesday next week, the 12th, and then Rangers Islanders on Thursday the 14th. We're really looking forward to that one. What should we be watching for as up and coming? What as hip Islander fans? what should we be paying attention to be on the up and up for this team, and sound like we're part of something small and exciting and that's growing? What are you looking forward to?
Well, at least for the short term, I mean, you want to see the team, especially considering how they came out so flat tonight. And again, I cannot emphasize enough just how disappointing their performance was tonight, and just the complete lack of intensity against a team that, beat them up last year. And you would have thought that they would have been looking for some kind of retribution, and you saw it, and you got none of it. And if you were at the Barclays Center this evening, you left just bewildered and saying to yourself, "What the hell was that?" I mean, how do you come out that flat and without any kind of intensity against a divisional opponent, in a measuring stick, type of game, against arguably the best team in the conference, or, best in one of the best teams in the league, and come out with that kind of performance at home in front of your home crowd? I mean, it was just baffling. And, they have a couple more. They have some divisional games coming up, as you pointed out. Philly on Saturday against the Philly team that just made a major trade yesterday, trading off two, salary cap albatrosses, if you will, in Luke Shen and Vinny LeCavalier, who had not played for them in almost 2 months. So you're going to see a different Flyer team on Saturday, a team that talent-wise is most certainly inferior to the Islanders, but a Flyer team that always gives the Islanders trouble. And then the Islanders will play a team on Tuesday that also made a big trade yesterday in the Columbus Blue Jackets, as they traded their number one center and best player in Ryan Johansson, brought in a great young defenseman by the name of Seth Jones. So a couple of divisional games, and then obviously the game next Thursday, a week from tonight, against the New York Rangers. That will be, of course, at the Barclays Center. Always, a great, fun game when those two teams get together. And we will have our next podcast after that game has taken place, so we can talk about their upcoming games.
That's right. So you made it this far, then I suspect you'll make it to the next episode. More fun to come. Thanks for joining us. Hip and the Lip, over and out.
All right.
Yeah.
Next. All right.